I have a dream, oh, I have a dream. Red, white, and blue, fly free, fly free. I believe, oh, I believe. Will you dream with me?
Good morning, everyone out there. Welcome to Changing Times. This is Wednesday, March the 30th. Boy, this month has gone by, Don. Can you believe it?
It's hard to believe.
Hard to believe. We are live at Springfield, Missouri at the Axe Media Group headquarters out on West Kearney. So the people from the Springfield area would know it's out by the old airport. They would recognize it right away. This is week number 52. 1 year. Hey, thanks to the audience for making this real. Thanks to God for allowing us to do this. We have conquered everything, including Facebook, who said that we weren't telling the truth part of the time, when all our listeners know that we are telling the truth. And the reason why our show is so successful, we have thousands of people in the United States and around the world watching our show today live. And the reason why they're doing that is because we have great guests. We have chosen 52 great guests over this past year. And we have another great guest today to complete this first year. And we're going to keep going because all we do is Don and I, we just talk. We just talk and ask a few questions. And then our guests just give so much great information. And
Lynn, because we have great sponsors, our sponsors are going to throw a party for our
That's
guests.
right.
And
That's
so
right.
all 52 are going to get to come together and
this
mingle
summer,
this summer.
sometime this summer, John Whittaker has volunteered his showroom in Springfield, Missouri on South Campbell. Got a great big showroom. We'll take the cars out. We'll just have it all empty. We're going to have great food, music, just a lot of good food to eat and snacks and things. And the most important thing is we wanted our guests to network with each other that way, because you might be able to find new patients. You might be, different people may find some new people to work with and things like that. So we thought we would do this as an annual thing. And so this will be our first one this summer. And that's going to be exciting too. We don't have any announcements today. We have been doing announcements. If you have an announcement in Southwest Missouri or somewhere, wherever you want to us make an announcement, we can do that. You can just email me at Lynn, L-Y-N-N, Morris, M-O-R-R-I-S 2012 at gmail.com. And we'll take that request and we'll put that announcement on. And I'm Lynn Morris.
And I'm Dawn Blackard.
Dawn Blackard. And you can actually email her too.
mycreativeworkhorse@gmail.com.
And she is the creative one in our group. And we're so glad to have Dawn as our co-host and to run through this first year. I think we're just going to go ahead and get right into our show. So our guest today is Dr. Kenneth Sharlin. And he is a neurologist. And more important, well, I think that's extremely important. And one of the reasons why Don and I think that is so important is because we just discussed before this show started that a normal family or patient, if they needed to see a neurologist, and I have a feeling this is this way around the country too, okay? But in Southwest Missouri, in the Springfield, Greene County, Christian County. I know you probably have patients in other counties too, don't you?
We actually have patients that come from all over the world.
Okay.
To see our
okay. Well, and you are a world-renowned physician, and we're going to make sure people understand that. So what I know, and Don and I both been in healthcare, so we know that if somebody tells, say your family practice doctor says you need a neurologist, and they go to start making an appointment. They're going to make an appointment maybe 6 to 9 or 10 months from now.
It is. Unfortunately, there's a very, very significant shortage of neurologists all around the country.
Well, I'm sure some of those things are really serious and they need to get in to see a doctor sooner, not later. So that's a problem, isn't it? It
is truly a problem. If we look at some of the statistics on the most common neurological diseases, there are 6.4 million people who have Alzheimer's disease today. There are a very significant percentage who are evolving Alzheimer's disease and don't even know it, because the changes that occur in the brain that become Alzheimer's disease begin 10 to 20 years before they actually show symptoms. And we're getting to the point, Lynn and Dawn, where, Alzheimer's disease is going to be like heart disease in the sense that, the American Heart Association says that heart disease is preventable, right? It's a preventable illness. And certainly if you should develop a little bit of chest pain, you don't think to yourself, well, I'll wait till I have that big heart attack to go see the doctor, right? You go get it checked out right away. And it's a very commonplace belief, I think your listeners would agree, that we say that there are many things that you can do for your heart health, as it were. Most of us don't make the same connection when it comes to the brain. But whether we're talking about Alzheimer's, whether we're talking about Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, some of the really big things that I see and treat, believe it or not, and I encourage you to believe it because we have done the work here at Sharlin Health and Neurology, that these are truly, some of these are preventable diseases. Many of them are, I truly believe it. These are diseases where early intervention makes a huge difference in the overall trajectory of the illness. So we want to catch these folks early. That's when we have the best chance to make an impact.
Well, I think that's very good. And, I want people to know, if you're around Southwest Missouri or anywhere around the country and the world, I mean, Dr. Sharlin does receive patients from other places besides Southwest Missouri. And one of the important things to note that we talked about before the show started, even as busy as you are, you can still see a patient, a neurology referral probably by May, sometime in May.
I think we are booking in May for neurology referrals at this time.
But it's just getting ready to start to be April. So, I mean, you're talking about maybe 30, 45 days out, and you're talking about 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 months out somewhere else in the Springfield area. And so yes, right there would be a reason why I would go call Dr. Sharlin's office and use him as a neurologist instead of somebody that I'm going to wait 6, 8, 10, and 12 and watch that progress go the bad way.
That's right.
And so that.
Well, also, Lynn, the deeper dive that Dr. Sharlin does for a patient and the more time that he spends with them too, yes, you're going to get in sooner, but you're going to get a different level of care when you come to see him.
Right. So I know one of the things, because I've known you since 2015 when you first moved to Christian County, Ozark, and we're going to find out why you moved there. But I've watched what you've done and believe in what you believe in and what your training is, and so I just wonder to myself, why do people go and wait? Maybe they just don't know any better, that they would wait. Their family practice, they go to their family practice because they trust that family practice doctor. But then it's kind of like me when I had these blood clots in my right leg and my knee, extremely painful, misdiagnosed twice, and finally diagnosed correctly, sent me that day to Mercy Hospital. They did the ultrasounds and found out I had one large blood clot and a smaller blood clot below the knee. And I couldn't even hardly walk. It got to that point. And I figured I had a blood clot. My wife's a nurse and been in healthcare her whole life. And so she told me I had a blood clot. But the first 2 doctors I went to told me I didn't have a blood clot.
Oh my.
And so thank goodness I got in that day that the family practice doctor got me in over to Mercy. But think if he had told me I had to wait 10 months.
Oh, well, these can be fatal, as you know.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm thinking this is why time is extremely important. And another reason why Dr. Sharlin's health practice is so important. So why did you move to Christian County, Ozark? You broke away from the hospital systems. You're a private practitioner. I applaud everybody who's a private practitioner. I've always been a private business owner myself. I didn't want to be part of a chain or a part of some other company that had satellite farm. I wanted to have my own business. And and that's what I did. So why did you move to Christian County?
Well, I think it's really a combination of factors. I have a little entrepreneurial streak in my, it's kind of part of my DNA, if you will. It goes back to my grandfather, whose name was Hiller Sharlin, emigrated to this country And he was only 7 years old at the time when he came. His father had actually come ahead of him, started a baby carriage business in Trenton, New Jersey, believe it or not. That business, as my grandfather got a little bit older, was taken over by my grandfather. He then changed that business model entirely. They opened up a retail lighting store in Trenton, and eventually that became what was known as Sharlin Light Corporation of America. And our motto
That's
is
amazing.
Yeah, brighten your nights with Sharlin lights.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's great.
So his son, my father, went on to become a doctor. He has his own very interesting story. He went to A.T. Stills, what was then called Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine, and returned to New Jersey to open up what became the largest private pediatric practice in Mercer County, New Jersey. So I've got a little bit of history there and a little bit of desire. And when I finished at Vanderbilt University with my degree and my training, I was torn. Do I stay at Vanderbilt? I love research. I love academics. Or do I go into private practice? I did go into private practice there as an employed physician and quickly found out that there were few opportunities for me to actually climb the ladder, as it were. Probably watched too many lawyer shows where people become partner, go up the track. But the doctor who employed me, who's a very fine physician herself and very successful, really kind of wanted an employee to do what we call in the business the grunt work. So I left, but I had signed what's called a covenant not to compete, and ended up in, you get these postcards in the mail, lovely Midwestern town, family oriented, right? And so I moved to Springfield, Missouri, and sort of got caught up in the employed physician circle for a while. But when the opportunity arose, I opened up Sharlin Health and Neurology.
I think the worst thing that ever happened in Springfield and around the United States is when I first got out of pharmacy school in 72, I was the assistant store manager at Professional Building. Petty Drug Company owned that Professional Building, 110 doctors. There was no other doctors in Springfield, Missouri. They were all in that one building. And so you had all your specialists. You had your surgeons, you had your heart specialists, you had your dermatologists, you had your pediatricians, neurologists. Dr. Brooks was the neurologist back then. He's retired. But I mean, there was all these people. They were all under one roof. There was no other clinics anywhere around, and they're all private. They all worked for themselves. And they worked together and referring people back and forth up and down the floors of the building. And then when we started having all these contracts and stifling, I think, the imagination of how a doctor really wanted to run their own practice, I think that was really the start of I think, in some ways, bad healthcare. And so that's interesting. Well, I think Donna is going to ask you about books that you've written.
So you have 2 books here. One of them, which one did you publish? And then the other one, I guess you're a co-writer on. They look like phenomenal books. And let me just say, as a practitioner, my mom is a former retired practitioner. You get tired of telling people the same thing over and over again, and you only have so much time. A book is such a great resource to be able to pour into your patient. What was the inspiration behind your books, and anything you want to tell us about them?
Well, thank you. Yes, I published both books. The second one was co-written with Angela Jenkins. She's a local registered dietitian. But I published my first book, the Healthy Brain Toolbox. Healthy Brain Toolbox. And it is available on barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com. And I'm proud to say it was #1 bestseller for a while.
Awesome.
It's really about giving people hope and changing the message of medicine. This is really at the core of what we do at Sharlin Health and Neurology, which is quite in contrast with today's medical environment. I mean, unfortunately, what happens is if you go to the doctor and you're fortunate enough to get an accurate and rapid diagnosis, get some answers for what's going on, too often the only thing you're asked to do is take a pill. And I always call this sort of like the roller coaster experience because, and I love Silver Dollar City, so don't get me wrong. But what happens when you go on one of those thrilling roller coasters? You get in the car right? And it's a safety concern. These are potentially very dangerous, but if used properly, of course, they're fun and safe. But, you know, the seatbelt goes on, the bar comes down, and you're pretty much locked in place for the ride. And that's how medicine works. It's like, well, Lynn, you know, you have this diagnosis. There's unfortunately very little we can do about it. Take this pill, come see me in 6 months. It's really all you're asked to do. And we see people with, you know, diagnoses very, you know, there's any diagnosis is serious, but fortunately there are some things that can be, quote, treated in such a way that, you know, if you have an infection and you take that course of antibiotics, you're pretty much good to go. But what happens if someone tells you you have Lou Gehrig's disease or Alzheimer's disease, and then the next word they hear is get your life in order? There's very little we can do about it. There's some medicine that might help a little bit, but, you know, ... And that's a very unfortunate message to give someone. It really renders them helpless and hopeless. And that is absolutely in contrast with what we do at Sharlin Health and Neurology. I have to say, first and foremost, that everything that we do and everything that we offer is science-based. There's no gimmicks here whatsoever. But it's fundamentally based on the idea that name your disease. I'm talking about disease, not an accident where you break a leg or something like that, or maybe something that you're born with. But all diseases really boil down to three fundamental things, and that is genetics. In other words, your unique biochemical susceptibility, lifestyle, and environment. And that is it. And in fact, it gets even more interesting because a lot of folks assume that their genes, their DNA, if you will, are their destiny, that whatever it runs in their family, so they're going to get it and there's nothing they can do about it. But in fact, lifestyle and environment influence the expression of their genes. We call that epigenetics. And so in fact, we have a tremendous amount of control over these conditions that doctors typically tell us there's nothing they can do about it, right? So it's a very exciting way to practice medicine, to help people identify the truly many causes of their illness. I'm going to borrow from a friend of mine who uses the phrase Alzheimer's disease is not due to just one thing. It's like having a leaky roof that has 36 holes in it, right? So our job is to identify all 36 of those leaking holes. And when we do that, we see reversal of cognitive decline. And we've published our work in a peer-reviewed journal back in 2018. Happens to be the largest case series ever published of improvement in patients with Alzheimer's.
Well, I want to tell you, Dr. Sharlin, because I bought your book. I think it was $12, I think is what it was. I don't know what it is today. But it's whatever the price is today, it's worth it, because basically this book discusses the strategies to avoid memory loss. And I guess all of us, as we get older, are going to have memory loss. Part of that is normal. But the abnormal part is the part where it just continues to go and go and go to eventually you'll be like my mother, who went into her kitchen but didn't know how to cook a meal, didn't even know how to fix coffee. That's really terrible. That's what you worry about. And when you have a family member that went through that and died with that, then you think to myself, whoa, I wonder if I'm going to have that, you know, and worry about that. But I know your book had some really good strategies, which I have done some of them, that really will help your brain function and keep it vitalic and strong and everything like that. So good for you on that book.
Yeah. So neurologists' proven strategies to avoid memory loss and protect your aging brain. There's nothing more important than having a brain that works. And we want as much quality in our lives as possible. And so like he's saying, you want to start sooner than later. You don't want to push it off. I love your analogy with the heart thing. You know, if you had chest pain, you wouldn't just, I'll just wait and see. You know, same thing with brain issues. So anywhere you are, you're listening in, you can get this book and just have a wealth of knowledge by Dr. Sharlin. So that's such a great resource. Now, would you talk a little bit about the nutrition book? And let me just say, very refreshing that I understand epigenetics, and very few people, very few doctors even talk about epigenetics. And I think you see when you hear from Dr. Sharlin, he's on the forefront. He is ahead of where research is going. He's with the science, and usually you have to be innovative with that. In epigenetics, just the whole fact that nutrition can influence our genes is not something that's talked about enough, and it's very refreshing to hear it from a doctor. And I can just tell you really care about your patients because you're giving them all facets of how to help them.
That's right. That's right. This book was published really on the premise that food is medicine. It's one of the most powerful things that we can do for our bodies and for our health, and certainly for our brains. That truly is what holistic medicine means. It means addressing the whole person and seeing things as connected. How many times you've gone to the doctor and know somebody's gone to the doctor, and I hear this all the time as a physician. Are you going to be talking to my gastroenterologist? Are you going to be talking to my cardiologist? I mean, there is a need for these specialties. However, is it odd that we sort of dice and slice the body, that we think that things that we're doing for the heart are somehow separate than things that we're doing for the brain, or things that we're doing for our digestive tract are different from things that we're doing for the brain? And now we know that there is a huge and very important connection between the digestive tract and the brain. All the more reason connecting food and medicine and brain health. So we felt the need at the time that this was published a couple of years ago to have something that we could give to all of our patients. We do have an in-house dietitian. Her name is Rachel Wemple. She is wonderful. But when our patients participate in what's called the Brain Tune-Up program, and that is where you can really take the deep dive with myself, my team. We get into lab studies that people are always amazed by. It's like, well, I've had my glucose checked, or I've had my sodium checked. They're like, no, this is not what we're talking about. This is a very deep dive into understanding what causes chronic inflammation, what causes oxidative stress, looking at toxins in the body and things like that, those 36 holes in the roof. So we're talking about epigenetics, and we're talking about food. And this is a big, complicated topic for a lot of folks. But for example, we test for things that influence, I'm going to use a little chemistry here. It's called methylation, methylation. But really, very simply, what this is about is how we can actually influence the expression of our genes through nutrition. It turns out that several of the B vitamins, B12, B6, folate, for example, influence this pathway that directly turn on health-promoting genes and turn off genes that promote illness through food.
Wow. And I tell you what, showed them the book on the screen there. This book also is available, through Amazon, and can they get that and order that from Barnes & Noble?
This one is on Amazon only. We also have, if you just go to my website, I'll give your listeners a little secret. They can get it for cheaper than it is on Amazon.
Okay, so what is the website?
Yeah, it is functionalmedicine.doctor. So I know a lot of folks are used to .com, that kind of thing, but this is .doctor, and it's spelled out DOCTOR. So functionalmedicine.doctor.
Very good. You know what? We're going to take a break just quickly. We're going to stay right here. I'm going to talk about two sponsors, and we'll get right back to our show. It's so interesting, but I want people to know there's a difference between medical doctors. Dr. Sharlin's an MD. Also, we're going to be talking about what's a functional doctor, and I'm going to be interesting to educate because he's going to educate you all on what that is, because that's not very many doctors out there in the country that do that, and that's extremely important. But you're also a holistic doctor. Not every medical doctor that you go to is a holistic doctor. I also think that's very important for your health care too. But anyway, so we're going to go ahead and start with our two sponsors. Thank you for the first half. Brad Pistow is a certified fiduciary financial planner. Interesting enough, this is kind of like God-led, because Brad Pistow's office is on Farmers Branch Road, right across the street from you, sir. You right across the street, Trinity Financial Services. The sign on the building where Dr. Devine, the veterinary's office is, you're right across the street in a great big complex. That's your space. And so you are a difference maker. And what do you call people?
Being the change.
Being the change. You are a difference maker.
Yes.
Everybody that's been on our show, all 52 weeks, we've had difference makers. We tell people to try to emulate what you do for other people all around the country and the world. But Brad Pistow, he's my certified fiduciary financial planner. I've used him now for about 5 years. His phone number, this is really important, 417-581-9222. 417-581-9222. You don't have to be in Missouri to call Brad Pistow. He is licensed in several states, and so he can help you. And if he's not licensed in the state that you live in today, he has friends and associates that can talk to you and help you with financial planning. It's never too early to think about retirement planning, and he is probably one of the best. All his plans are plans that you'll not lose a penny. So as the stock market goes up and down, and it may crash someday like it did in 2008, you don't have to worry. You're not going to lose 50% of everything that you saved and earned. You won't lose a penny. It's always going to be there for you. That's the type of plans that he has. And you call that number and Lisa or Hunter will answer the phone and they will give you. He's written 2 books. They're both best-selling Amazons. The first book, Safe Money Matters, is and was the #1 best-selling book on Amazon for retirement planning. #1 for many, many weeks, months, and years. #1, he'll send that book to you free. He also wrote a book in December, published a book in December called Bulletproof. Bulletproof is a follow-up on Safe Money Matters, and he'll send you that book free. He's not trying to make money off his books. He wants to educate you on the value of starting early and certain plans that you can do that will guarantee you a lifetime income. And so he's extremely good. He goes all around the country speaking. I read his article in Florida when Jan and I were at our condo in Florida one spring. I was reading USA Today at a restaurant eating breakfast, and I saw Brad Pistow. I thought it was Pistol, but God was good. He actually ended up being in Ozark, Missouri, where I work and live. And so I highly recommend Brad Pistow. And he's been really good sponsor for us. He's also donated to other causes.
Yes. He helped with the toy drive for Harmony House, and just can't say enough good stuff about our sponsors because they allow this show to take place so we can get good information and spotlight all the different nonprofits.
Sure. He's just a tremendous guy. He and his son, Hunter, and Lisa. So another sponsor that we're extremely proud of, we've had him on our show too. So we've had both Brad on our show and John Whittaker. John Youngblood, John Whittaker, been in business 43 plus years, the longest family-owned car dealership in Southwest Missouri. Okay. Now they're a little different. They're located at 3525 South Campbell, 3525 South Campbell. They sell Nissan and Kia. And across the street on Campbell Street, just right across the street, is their used car lot. They sell all makes and models, mostly newer models, trucks, big trucks, little trucks, sports cars, convertibles, economy cars, just all kinds of cars you can buy from them. They buy the best cars and then they service them, and they have a lot of guarantees on their used cars, and they're extremely good. John Whittaker was on our show, and one of the things that piqued my interest is he was talking about an electric car, and we were asking about when do we buy an electric car. I don't want to buy an electric car, but like the government wants to force us to buy electric cars. But he was talking about an electric car that they have that actually never has to be recharged. Can you believe that? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want to stop and try to recharge my car every 3 months, or not months, but hours. I don't want to do that. I mean, who has the time to drive across the country and recharge your battery, or do you want to charge it at home at night? I don't want to do that. But he has a car that they've come out with that has a generator on it. So it starts out as electric. It averages about 55 miles per gallon, and it runs the battery down, gets to a certain point, kicks on over to gasoline, and then while you're using gasoline going down the road, the generator regenerates the battery to recharge it, and then the battery's full charge, and then it kicks back over. You never know when it's doing that. So it just goes back over to electric. That's the type of car. If I was going to buy a hybrid car today, not knowing what different leadership in our country would want us to have, that'd probably be the best bet, is something like that. So he also has a guarantee that you can actually buy online. Somebody like Don, probably you too, you could do it online. Not me. I don't like to do stuff like that, but he could actually, you can actually buy the car online, never see it in person. You can actually make your own trade-in. You can actually pick your own payments. You do it all online. So you never have to mess with a salesman. And then they'll deliver the car to your house, park it in your driveway, and then you can actually drive it around. You can put the wife in the front seat, put the kids in the back, put the dog in the backpack, and put the luggage in. You can just visualize how you're going to do this car. If you don't like the car, they'll bring you another car. 72-hour guarantee. I mean, nobody else does stuff like that. So very good service. We highly recommend him. We're looking for a few more sponsors. It's very inexpensive. We're reaching a large audience. And so if you want to think about being a sponsor, we'd love to listen to you and talk to you and tell you about it. Just email me, Lynn, Lynn, Morris, Morris, 2012 at gmail.com. Or if you're all watching on Facebook or YouTube live to now, send us a message and let us know, and we'll get.
Well, we are having a really big audience, and we actually, I don't want to say the person's name, but when we were talking about hybrid cars and electric cars, we had a major network reach out and tell us that they watched our show and that we needed to get some sound bites talking about that. So you never know who's out there watching us. So today we have Dr. Sharlin with us, and I love to brag on Christian County. I also love to brag on just Southwest Missouri. Lynn knows this, but we had Springfield Business Journal on 2 episodes ago. And, you know, we were talking about the businesses and the restaurants and just how awesome really our area is. But what people don't realize is we have the best doctors that are available, have made themselves available to people. So, you know, we've got hotels here. If you want to come see Dr. Sharlin, you can come in, you could turn around and drive back, you know, so many hours. I'm sure people do that all the time to come see you. They drive in, they spend time with you, and they leave. But you are a difference maker. You know, when you have either yourself or a family member who needs a neurologist, it's not some little issue, and it's not something that just anybody can figure out. You know, that's why neurologists are in such demand. So for you to be available to people to get into within the same, you know, calendar time, it's crazy to me that it could be booking out, you know, basically now into the year 2023 for some people that need, you know, help. What would you like to tell our audience that you haven't already said, just about anything about yourself or your practice or early prevention?
Oh, yeah. So many things we can talk about for sure. You know, I was thinking about your sponsors. I did want to say we take our RV over to Youngblood RV, and they do an excellent job in servicing, and they do sell very nice RVs over there as well. But also the financial planner, that's such an interesting topic, because one of the things I talk about a lot with those who are interested in the style of practice we have is that a major investment company puts out, their name is not important, but they put out a report every year that asks the basic question: how much should a retiring couple have saved by the time they're 65 to use for the rest of their lives in terms of healthcare dollars? What do you need to now? I know there's Medicare, right? Mm-hmm. But Medicare doesn't cover everything.
Right.
How much should you expect to spend in your retirement on your healthcare? And the answer, and this is a very reputable company, $295,000. That's the average cost out of pocket for a retiring couple today. Now, I don't know about you, Lynn, but I think that, you know, the average American, hardworking American, if they're lucky, they have $295,000, $300,000 for their whole retirement, not just for their health care costs. So we're in kind of a cycle of insanity, if you will. Number one, we do need excellent retirement planning. So I like your gentleman there. But we also need to be thinking about, now, wait a minute. I worked so hard all of these years so that I could retire and enjoy that chapter in my life and not be sick and not, have lots of, well, our bucket list is we want to travel, right? How many people want to travel in their retirement? And then a spouse gets sick or they both get sick and they can't do that traveling. So not only are they spending money that they save to enjoy their retirement instead on seeing the doctor, on paying into these large healthcare systems. They're only too happy to take their money, but they're not actually getting better, right? So what we do at Sharlin Health Neurology is we address those causes of why they got sick in the first place so that people can spend their hard-earned dollars on the things that they have wanted to do in retirement and not spend it on seeing the doctor.
So, doctor, what you're saying is you're really defining what a functional doctor is. And when I researched it, so maybe I'm wrong, so you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't mind, but I tried to read different articles about functional doctors. And about everywhere I read, it said to me that 1 out of every 10 physicians in this country, it seemed to be about 10%. One was a little bit higher, one was a little bit lower. So I'm going to say average of 10%. Whether you're a medical doctor like you or an osteopathic doctor like a DO, which those doctors are taking the same boards today. They're just as qualified as any other doctor. But only about 10% of all the practicing physicians in this country are functional doctors. And to me, when I started reading about what a functional doctor is, you're kind of like a detective. You've gone to additional 2 or 3 years of schooling. I looked at all your medical schools you went to, pretty impressive. And so then you're kind of like a detective. You kind of like, you don't just decide that you got diabetes. You actually try to figure out why they have diabetes, because we know that every drug has side effects. I dispensed millions of drugs over my 43 years of owning my own stores, but I knew every one of them could help you, but I also knew every one of them could hurt you. I mean, that's just the way it is. Drugs have side effects too. Sometimes, yeah, and sometimes they're good side effects, and you actually use them for the good side effects, and then sometimes they don't. But so that's the kind of doctor you are. So you actually use additional training and some diagnostics to figure out what's causing high blood pressure.
Why have you gotten sick in the first place? So. When we think of a doctor, very often it just starts, we have a system in our office we call our 5-pillar system. And it begins with identify the problem accurately. And you could think of that like make a diagnosis. And you'd be amazed how many folks come into our office. Well, my doctor told me I probably had Alzheimer's disease. There was little that they said, there's nothing you can do about it. Just take this pill, right? Well, how'd they make that diagnosis? Well, they had me do a little 5-minute pencil and paper test, and I struggled with a little bit, and they sent me for an MRI of the brain, and that picture basically said, you don't have a tumor. So my doctor said, well, if you don't have a tumor and you don't have an infection, you don't have a stroke, it must be Alzheimer's disease. And again, it's sort of what we call diagnose and adios, right? So it's very unfortunate that is actually not the way that Alzheimer's disease is diagnosed today. We take a very, very deep dive, for example, into understanding what is going on, identifying the problem correctly, making that diagnosis. But traditional medicine generally has stopped there, right? It says, you have this diagnosis, here's the array of available treatments for that disease. Functional medicine is patient-centered. It's not disease-centered. It's about you as a person. It's about kind of understanding, as the expression goes, what makes you tick? Why did you get sick in the first place? Because if we can bring clarity to that, if we can bring that into focus, then it starts to arm us with information as to what needs to be done to change the direction of that illness.
Well, and that's very good. And so what is your percentage of patients? I mean, just roughly, you've got so many are coming in for neurology issues, and that's referrals and things like that. But now you've got these, how many people really understand what a functional doctor is and that you even do that? How do you get a point across to your patients that hey, you don't have to take hypertensive medicine for the rest of your life. You could actually, if you could figure out what's causing that hypertension, then maybe you would, because we know blood pressure medicines have side effects too.
Well,
And so sometimes people go off their blood pressure medicines because they don't like the side effects. Then that can
That's
also
right.
cause problems. And so there's all kinds of issues going on. But how do the people know that you're a functional doctor? Most people don't even know what it is. So how do you teach them and allow them to know that?
Well, we do have a significant presence on social media, of course. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, I have a YouTube channel. I do speak around the country. I have my books. So we have many avenues. We have an excellent website, functionalmedicine.doctor, all geared toward education. We even run a little online group called Brain Tune-Up University every other Tuesday right now. We may bring that to every week. Very inexpensive to jump in on that. It's not free. $25 though a month is pretty darn inexpensive. That's a lot less than your copay when you go to the doctor.
Sure.
$25 a month, and you get online with myself and my team. We rotate through every week learning just something that you can do to change the direction that things are going. Right now, just to put things in perspective, 90% of my practice is not the traditional neurology model, meaning,
good.
Yeah, that we're down to 10% of here's the diagnosis and here's the medication you can take for that condition. The reality is, however, that functional medicine is very different than, say, some folks come to me and they say, well, I don't want to take medicine. Can you just tell me what supplements to take? That is not how it works. If a supplement treats an illness, it is a drug. Bottom line, it has pharmacological activity, and a supplement would have to go through the same rigors of evidence-based medicine and clinical trials as any other medication out there. So what we have to do is educate our folks. Not that we don't use supplements. I actually have my own line of supplements called Dr. Sharlin's supplements, and you can find those at drsharlins.com. However, what we really want to do is get folks to a different level of understanding of what they can do to take charge of their own health. It's about empowerment. There's something that is called the stages of change. And you may or may not be familiar with it. It certainly applies to any area of life. It doesn't necessarily apply to medicine. But it begins with something we call the pre-contemplation stage. And that's kind of like you don't know. It's not in your wheelhouse. You have no idea. And maybe you're not even open to that. Maybe it's just like, I'm not interested, right? And there are certainly folks, God love them, of course, everyone. That's just the way they operate, and they want to go to the doctor and they just want the medicine. Thank you very much. And we can certainly provide that service. Then the next level is contemplation. And that is, I kind of heard a little bit about that functional medicine stuff, and I'm intrigued by it. I'm not sure if it's right for me, but I'd like to learn more and just explore that. And we have lots of avenues to do that. The next stage is called preparation. You know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to sign up for that 5K. So I'm going to go down to Fleet Feet Sports. I'm going to get the shoes. I'm going to get the shorts. I'm going to get the shirt. I'm going to get the training plan and all that because I'm really excited. I'm ready to go, right? And then the next stage is action. And we love action takers because functional medicine is about engagement. You have to be part of the plan. It is your plan. It is your health condition. We're here to help. We are your team. We are your support. But it takes work, and you will have to do that work in the end. Our job ultimately, and I tell my patients this all the time, is that there's a difference between how am I going to accomplish that hard work? Because it is hard work. So that's what we do at Sharlin Health and Neurology.
Hey, doctor, I think we're going to run out of time, but you know what, Don, I think we need Dr. Sharlin to come back, and he could spend a whole hour just on functional medicine.
I hope you come back this next year for our next 52. Give the audience your phone number, the best way to reach you again.
Yes. First of all, I'd love for you to check out our website, which is functionalmedicine.doctor, all one word, .doctor, DOCTOR. We can be reached at 417-485-4330. We're at 5528 North Farmer Branch Road, Ozark, Missouri.
Very good. Well, that wraps up our show today. Next week, April 6th, we will be celebrating our 1-year birthday, and we're going to have Jim and Pam Whining here, and he's our CEO. We'll have Paul Collins. We'll have several people here. We'll have birthday cake. Louis Michael will be our guest, and he will be with the what is that group?
Choose to Live.
Choose to Live. Choose to Live, talking about suicides and do not commit suicide. We'll be back next Wednesday. Thanks for listening today. Thanks, Dr. Sharlin.
Thank you.
Do I hear a hallelujah? Can I get a hoorah from a patriot?